Hello there, thank you for tuning in to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this month I'm going to talk about how you could be a cis ally to a trans person, really trans woman specifically, if you are cis. And if you are trans, then please feel free to leave your thoughts and your perceptions in the comments because yours may be different than mine. So that's the first thing that I do have to really stress about this video. When I say how you can best be a cis ally to a trans woman, I am basing this off of my personal feelings and experience, my limited experience in the last year of existing as a trans woman, and it's only been a year. So I just have to stress really strongly that I could not ever dream to be the spokeswoman for all trans people or all trans women. I could never ever speak for anyone else. When I say how you can be a cis ally, I am talking about how I would prefer people to react and interact with me, and what has really worked well for me over this past year and what has turned me off. And that doesn't mean that every single trans person in the world feels that same way. Everyone is different. Everyone's going to have their different preferences. I do feel, though, by following my suggestions, I don't think you would go wrong necessarily. Maybe you're not interacting in a way that someone else prefers the most, but I can't imagine you're going to upset, offend, or piss anyone off by following what works for me personally. Also, I do have to mention that I am speaking from the experience of a trans woman, so I'm going to be looking at it through that lens. So some of this may generally also apply to trans men or non-binary individuals, but some of it may not. So apologies, I'm not trying to exclude anyone. It's just I am only speaking from my experience, and I don't have the experience of a trans man or a non-binary individual. I have the experience of a trans woman, so I'm not trying to exclude people. I'm just speaking from my own experience. So that's my little preamble. I'm going to go through this and talk about 3 different types of relationships that you could have with a trans woman. 1, you could be a complete stranger. 2, you could be acquaintances. Or 3, you could be a close family member or friend, close friend. So I'm going to go through each of those and talk about what has really worked well for me and what I would suggest. And again, I can't speak for every trans woman in the world, but I don't feel like you would go wrong by doing what has worked for me personally. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to start by talking about how you could support someone you see in the community, at stores, in the bar, wherever out there in the world, who's a complete stranger who you don't know, who you perceive as a trans woman. And just a quick side note, I do want to just mention that this video is not intended for transphobes. That's not the audience here. Transphobes are going to transphobe. I'm talking about people who want to be supportive of the trans community, and more specifically trans individuals when they come into their lives, and they want to make sure that they know that they have your support. That's who I'm talking to. Transphobes are just going to transphobe. Anyway, so you see a person in the community who you perceive to be a trans woman, and that is the key phrasing here. You perceive them to be a trans woman. If they are a complete stranger, they could be they could be a cis woman that you perceive as masculine, so you make assumptions. It could be a cis man who identifies as cis male, who prefers he, him pronouns, but just likes to dress in what society considers more feminine clothing. So you should be careful about jumping to conclusions. Or also it could be a non-binary individual. It could be someone you perceive, oh, well, look, there's a person who looks like they were born as a man and they're dressed in feminine clothing. They must be trans, she, her. Not necessarily. So never make assumptions. That's the first that's the first thing. And then the next thing that I would say you should never do, in my opinion, with a stranger. Now, this is different when we get into acquaintances and close friends. I'm talking about just someone you've never spoken to before. So you go up to them and you say, I really appreciate that you are so brave and you are such an inspiration to me. That would freak me out. And maybe not every trans woman would have that reaction, but at the very least, it's awkward. Like, I don't know you. Who the hell are you? And the main thing that does for me is it makes me feel othered. I feel singled out. Would you go up to a cis woman and say something like that? No. So if you wouldn't say it to a cis woman, don't say it to a trans woman, because it singles them out. It makes me feel really singled out and othered. I even had, and this is probably going to vary from other trans women, but I had someone who worked at a grocery store that I frequented just come up to me randomly. We weren't having a conversation. We didn't need to have a conversation, and just ask me if I was she, her. And that made me feel singled out too, because she didn't really need my pronouns. And that might be something that other people don't feel that way, but I felt singled out in that instance because we weren't having a conversation. There was no need for her to ask that. If you are having a conversation and you're not sure, yes, please feel free to ask if you feel comfortable doing so. But just randomly approaching me, at least, and asking, I personally felt singled out. And it was kind of awkward. So just be careful. But I can tell you the best thing that you can do, that really, really works the best for me. This is especially if you are a cis woman. But you could also do this as a cis male as well, but I'll get into that in just a minute. But if you say, hey, I like your dress, I like your skirt, nice earrings, just compliment something about the way they dress, their accessories, their hair. And this is good for several reasons. One, I see cis women do this to each other all the time. Cis women are constantly complimenting each other on their accessories, their clothing, their hair, their makeup, their nails, those sorts of things. So it's normalized. So you are treating me the same as you treat cis women. So that's good. So that's one benefit of it. So it doesn't make me feel singled out at all. I feel normalized. And two, it always feels good to get a compliment. And for that reason, though, you should mean it. Don't say, oh, that's a trans person, so I'm going to just go compliment her dress just to make her feel good, even though I think her dress is hideous. Don't do that. Please be honest. Please be honest when you do that. I've had that happen to me several times, and I'm just going to go off the assumption that they're being genuine, but I don't really know that. Maybe they're like, oh, there's a trans person, I'm just going to try to be nice. It's better if you mean it. But if you do mean it, if you see someone you perceive as a trans person, trans woman, and you like something they're wearing, compliment them like you would compliment anybody else. And in that situation, it doesn't matter if you misperceived them, if they're actually a cis male who dresses in feminine clothing. Everybody's going to appreciate that compliment. So to me, that is the safest way to go, rather than the whole going up to a stranger and being like, oh, you inspire me so much. It's really well-intentioned, but it's very awkward. So a simple compliment on clothing or accessories, etc., is really the best way to go, just as you would do with anybody else. And another thing, continuing on, if you are a cis woman and you want to be supportive of a trans woman, in all female spaces, such as women's restroom, don't bat an eye. don't tell them how inspiring they are. Treat them exactly the same way you would treat anyone else you encounter in that all-female space. So let me tell a story that I went to a concert a couple months ago at a club, and this was like during the brief time period when it looked like COVID was wrapping up, and it was before the Delta variant. And I went to this live music show, and there was actually no restrictions at all, no masks, nothing. That was nice for like one time before the Delta variant hit. But anyways, like, I drink a lot of beer and water, which makes me pee a lot. So I was in and out of the bathroom a lot, and there was a pretty crowded women's bathroom. And there was two sinks next to each other. Every time I went in there to wash my hands, I was next to somebody else. They would chat with me like I belonged. Didn't look at me like you didn't belong there, or I was an other, or I was, this brave person for going into the women's bathroom, or anything ridiculous like that. Chatted with me the same way they chatted with all the other women who would be washing their hands next to them. I actually got a sense of gender euphoria just from, this is silly, but this woman asked me if there was any soap left because the soap dispensers were empty, and she asked me if there was any soap in the one that was near me, and I was like, and I pointed to, there was actually a bottle that was set on the counter, and I pointed to it. No, it's in the bottle. And it was so weird, but I got overwhelmed with a sense of euphoria because that was toward the end of the night. There was an cumulative effect where just people were just treating me like I belonged there. And she's like, oh, she's asking me where the soap is. It's like, I am a woman who belongs in the women's room. So just do that. It's very simple. And that's all you really have to do. Now, for the men, cis men, also treat all women the same, cis and trans. But hopefully, if you're watching this, you treat them respectfully. Because if you don't treat them respectfully, any women, if you treat them like they're garbage or like they're sex objects, then you deserve the wrath of hell. But if you treat women with respect, and I hope that you do if you're a cis male watching this, then please just treat all women the same, trans or cis. If you compliment cis women on their clothing in a non-creepy way, then do that with trans women as well. Very, very simple. Okay, so let's move on to talking about acquaintances. So if you are an acquaintance with a trans woman, so this would be a coworker that maybe you chat with occasionally, but it's not somebody you have to interact with daily for part of your job, or it could be a friend of a friend, someone who perhaps runs in the same circles of friends as you do, but you don't necessarily have a close relationship with them. So that sort of thing. That's the definition of acquaintance, in case anybody needs to know that. It is someone who is not a stranger, but also not a friend. There's shockingly a large number of people who don't understand the distinction between acquaintance and friend. But anyways, I digress. So, an acquaintance, coworker, friend that you're not super close with, something like that. So you might be able to get away with the whole you inspire me, I think you're really brave. That's maybe okay. I only say that because someone did say that to me recently who I consider an acquaintance, somebody who's a friend of a friend who I've chatted with before but don't know super well, and I thought she was very sweet. It was very sweet and straight from the heart, and I felt it. Like it was very sweet. But I would be careful still. I think you need to feel out the situation, feel out the person. You don't want to come across as condescending. So you got to be careful. It did work for me, at least on 2 occasions that I can think of. So it's possible, but I would still be careful with that. Feel out the situation. Make sure you feel confident that that's going to be well received. If not, I think you can always, you can always just go back to treating a trans woman the same way that you would treat all women, Or, I should actually say more generally, treat a trans woman the same way you would treat all people, first off. I just want to be treated like anyone else, like I'm a human being, like I'm a person. But then on the deeper layer, I want to be treated like I'm all other, or like all other women. And all women are women. Cis women are women. Trans women are women. I think where the transphobes get caught up is that, trans women don't have periods. They don't have a menstrual cycle. They can't have babies. They don't have a uterus. Therefore, they're not women. Well, there are cis women who have those qualities as well. So that has nothing to do with being a woman or not. Yes, trans women are a different type of woman than cis women. But that doesn't mean we're not all women. So you treat us all the same. So when it comes to acquaintances, if you are a cis woman, what I really like is when other women not only use my name and pronouns, but then say things like, you go girl. You call me things like lady, girlfriend, girl, mama, mamacita, chica, anything like that. I always like that because it just it's normalized. So make sure it's something that you would say to a cis woman. Don't try too hard. If it comes off as too try hardy, then it won't go over well. But if it's a natural thing that you do anyways, please do. Please just treat us like you treat anybody else. This is going to be the theme of this video. That's really the essence of it. This is what I want, and I'm pretty sure it's what most trans women would like, just to be treated like a woman. I'll just kind of be repeating myself. With cis men, same thing. Just treat a trans woman like you would treat a cis woman. We're all women. That's all it really boils down to. And I think in acquaintance levels where you got to be careful not to be too try hardy, as I said. Don't force it too much. Just be natural. Just be like you would be with anyone else. And if you can say words like girl, girlfriend, and things like that, I always appreciate it. And again, the compliments. Never go wrong on any level with the compliments on the nails, the hair, the clothing. You can do that across any level. And so now let's go ahead and let's get to the hard part. This is when there's someone that you are close with. And you may be watching this and think that you don't have anyone you're close with who's trans. You could be wrong because maybe they just haven't come out yet. You don't know that. So this is, for me, what worked for me when I came out. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Okay. So first of all, if someone comes out and you want to be supportive, then be supportive. As they're coming out, do not at that point in time express any of your doubts, your fears, because coming out is extremely hard. She's going to be extremely, extremely nervous, even if you're her closest friend. It's going to be extremely difficult. So you just have to recognize that. That's why in my video about coming out, I kind of recommended that for trans individuals who would like to come out, that email worked well for me, and it was suggested to me from another friend who worked well for her as well. And I have gotten feedback that doesn't work for everybody, and that's fine. But one of the benefits when a trans person comes out in email, that gives the cis person who wants to be supportive more time to process and to not have the initial reaction be something that might be perceived as off-putting. So, but if they don't write you an email and they just lay it on you and it comes out of complete nowhere, then whatever feelings that you're having of doubt or anything like that, deal with them later. and right there in that moment be there for that person. Some of the phrases that I heard that for me personally worked very well was that I'm so happy for you. I'm happy that you get to be your true self. I actually, in one of the emails that I wrote an email to like 3 or 4 close friends at once, and one of them like called me up on the phone afterwards just to tell me how happy he was for me that I get to be my true authentic self, and that really meant a lot to me. So I think in this situation, this is a situation where you can, I wouldn't maybe go with a brave and inspiring route at this point, but maybe just how happy you are for them. I think just show them that you not only accept them, but you support them, and then you will be an ally for them. So that's the best way to do it. I also heard an alternate way to do it from one of my favorite YouTubers, Jessie Ginger. One of her videos a while back, she mentioned that when she first came out to one of her close friends, he was like, okay, cool, you want to play some video games? Which is what they always do with each other, play video games, and just went right back to normal. And she said that that was awesome. And so no one did that with me, but that's an interesting way to go about it too. But if you do that, just make sure that you're not in denial. Actually, either way, make sure that you're not in denial about your feelings. So I said if you do have any misgivings or feelings of doubt, don't express them at the initial coming out, but do process them. Do not ignore them. I think the worst thing you can do is just go, no, I support you, I'm totally fine, and just completely ignore your own feelings. That's only going to cause problems down the road. You can't ignore your own feelings. So you do have to process them and deal with them, especially if it's a situation like mine where I came out late in life, so that I knew people for 15, 20, 30, and with family 40 plus years that knew me, perceiving me a certain way. So it was an adjustment in their head to, oh, I have to now perceive this person in a different way. And I think it's human for that to be hard, for that to be an adjustment. I think that's normal, that's expected, especially in situations where it's been a very long time of perceiving a person in a certain way. Even when it's not been that long, it still can be hard. So I want you to recognize that that's normal, that's natural, but then I want you to deal with it and, so that you can be there to support your trans friend or family member whenever they need it. If you cannot work it out within yourself or with your therapist or with your other friend or whoever, then, and you think you're in a close enough relationship, then you can approach that person, the trans person in question, and have a discussion about how you're feeling. I would say try to deal with it on your own, but do deal with it. Do acknowledge that it is normal to have some misgivings because you're used to seeing a person a certain way, and at the same time love and accept and support them. You can do both, but deal with your problems so that you can eventually just be there to support them. And then the biggest thing that you can do to be an ally is when you witness anyone else misgendering her, or them, if we're talking about this, could apply to anyone. If you see anyone misgendering them, stand the fuck up for them, honestly. Especially if it's a family member, like if you're a brother or sister and it's the aunt or uncle or parents or someone else in the family who's doing the misgendering. It's tough for us trans people sometimes to stick up for ourselves. Some can do it better than others. So it's always appreciated when we have that cis ally to correct them when they misgender somebody, and just stand up for us. So I would say that is probably the number one thing that you can do. But first you do got to deal with your own shit. And if you need to discuss it with the person, then do it. But you got to deal with it, and you got to accept that it exists, and then deal with it, move on, and then always be there for them. And that is how you can be a cis ally to a trans person that you are close with. And the last thing I'll leave you with, the last thing that you can do, and probably the most important thing you can do to be a cis ally to trans people, whether you know them or not, is to do something that I have recent years I'm learning to do as a privileged white person to support people of color and people in the African American community, is to listen, first of all, and use your privilege to your advantage. Stick up for them, as I said, become an activist, speak out in the cis and straight community in favor of your LGBTQ peers. And again, I am still learning all this myself. I've been trans for a year, and only in the last 10 or so years have I been learning to really start to use my white privilege to help people of color. So same principles apply here. So I will leave you with that. Thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of it. If you're trans and you completely disagree with something I said, please feel free to message me or write it in the comments. Or if you agree with something I said, please message that too in the comments as well. Anyways, you can check out all of my trans story videos where I tell my personal story. I also did a transition timeline, and then I did 4 videos where I talked more in depth about my story. So please check those out if you're interested. And if you are a nerd who's into Star Trek and Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's primarily what I use this channel for. So I've got a lot of stuff on that kind of thing. Regardless, I really hope you subscribe, and I hope to see you real soon. I will probably be putting out trans-specific related videos about once a month, maybe twice a month if I think of 2 things to talk about in a month. And if you have any suggestions on topics, please feel free to leave those in the comments, and I will see you real soon. Goodbye.